The following segment comes from a full SEC preview episode from Running Out the Clock. If you like what you hear in this segment, then be sure and subscribe to the channel so that you can catch all of our SEC previews, including whether or not we think the teams discussed in these previews will do better, worse, or the same this season. Texas A&M this season, they enter in having lost one of the most dynamic players in college football in Christian Kirk last year. A guy who you give him an inch of space and he makes a play happen. He's now gone. They still have questions at quarterback, considering they bounced back and forth between freshmen Nick Starkel and Kellen Mond last year, both returning. We're going to turn this over to Ro Hunter, who has prepared a bit of a scouting report on the Aggies for us. Ro, what can we expect from Texas A&M under Jimbo Fisher?
Well, let's first and foremost get the name right. It's not Jimbo Fisher. It's Jimbo Fisher, the $75 million man.
Right.
That's how much they paid this guy for the next 4 years to come and
they paid him all up front, if I remember correctly. They gave him
all up front. 10 years, not 4, but yes.
Is it 10 years?
10 years, yep.
Good grief.
I didn't read
only Mississippi has that stupid you can only hire a coach for 4 years rule.
That's such a stupid rule. Oh, my gosh.
Well, some strong opinions.
Keeps you from paying a guy for 10 years, which is probably not a great thing.
That is true.
So you have Nick Saban, Urban Meyer, and Dabo Swinney, and then Jimbo Fisher. These are the only guys who've won national championships, and now he's in the most grueling, terrible, best conference, or at least in the West, in the west side of the Southeastern Conference. Very, very difficult. So another great coach to go in another good conference, but this is a team that he's taking over that has some talent, but not much talent. Excuse me. I would probably guess this year that it's going to be a mulligan year for Texas A&M. Right off the bat, I'm probably predicting them only about 6 or 7 wins. Currently, they have a quarterback challenge going on, or a fight between, I think his name is Nick Starkel or something like that.
Yep.
Starkel, yeah. And then the other guy is Kellen Mond, who started most of the year last year. The O-line is going to be pretty good, according to all the stuff that I'm reading. The O-line looks pretty good.
That I am currently reading.
That you're currently looking at?
I'm currently reading right now. Well, I think for this year, it's going to be an interesting year. Kevin Sumlin will relatively – he left the program with a pretty good team that Jimbo Fisher has. It might just be the most complete A&M team in a long time, but the superstar players aren't there. It's going to be a pretty challenging year. In the long run, after this 1 year that they're probably going to have a mulligan on, I very much think that they're going to be very good in the near future. Jimbo Fisher is just a great coach all around. He does a great job with all sorts of his players in development. All of his players love him for the most part. But I don't see them winning any more than 7 games. They play Clemson, at Alabama, at Auburn, LSU.
They play Clemson at Alabama. Wow.
Well, they play Clemson, pause, then at Alabama.
Everybody in St. Louis is very excited about that game.
But they'll be competitive. I mean, the other side of their schedule is Northwestern State, ULM, Kentucky, Ole Miss, and UAB. Then they have to split road games against South Carolina and then also Mississippi State. What was that?
Judson has some
baby
opinions.
does not approve.
Maybe does.
Talking about the Knowles.
Talk about the Knowles, man. Talk about the Knowles. I'll probably say the best of offensive weapon that they have going for them is Trayvon Williams. He's a 5'9", 200-pound starter who last year he destroyed UCLA with a 200-yard game and 2 scores, and then kind of trailed off the rest of the year. But as a freshman, he had a 1,000-yard season. So he's got the speed to hit the home runs and everything like that, but he's on a big-time workhorse. I don't know how he's going to fit in the offensive scheme of Jimbo Fisher. I mean, he might do something totally different with A&M. We just don't know yet. we'll see how it goes. The defense should be okay, but they have a awesome dude and a defensive end in Durham. He had 56 tackles last year and 11 sacks with 12 tackles for loss as well. So he is a beast. But outside of that, it's kind of up for grabs. Their cornerback game last year was awful. I think they were one of the worst in the SEC last year. And then, like I said, it's either going to be Kellen Mond or Nick Starkel who's going to fight for that job. But it doesn't really matter. It really doesn't. To me, I think they're both kind of on the same plate. I know Kellen Mond. He didn't have a great year last year, but it was decent. And apparently Jimbo Fisher likes Starkel as well. So we'll see how it turns out. I think the game to look out and circle on your calendar there is going to be LSU. That's when LSU has its chances to make a statement with Clemson and Alabama. But let's be honest, they're not going to. I don't see that happening.
Right.
And then they're not going to win on the road at Auburn. South Carolina maybe, but LSU will be the one to kind of be really excited for Texas A&M fans. Outside of that, it's kind of a toss-up. But like I said, it's going to be a mulligan year. Just kind of, Texas A&M fans, if you want to do some stuff this fall that you don't usually get to do, maybe get into a couple of binge-worthy shows. Castle Rock is really good. You don't have to watch all the games. Maybe do the halftime, or maybe watch till halftime or after halftime. That's what I do when my team is bad. I only watch one half of the game, but no, in all likelihood, it'll be a decent mediocre year this year. So it'll be an exciting time. I think that's all I got to say about the Texas A&M scouting report.
It's some of the things you mentioned, Travion Williams, the running back, who I think this is an interesting tidbit about him. Over his career, he has had 7 touchdowns that have been 23-yard or longer runs, including the longest being 89 yards. So he has 7 touchdowns that have been over 23, between 22 and 89 yards. So he's got some speed to him. Also, as well, Jimbo Fisher being we were talking a bit before we got going in our production meeting about Jimbo being a bit of more of a pro-style offense type of guy, which makes you think maybe Nick Starkel has the leg up on the job, being a little bit more comfortable in that situation. Nick Starkel, over the last 4 games of last season, threw for 353 yards a game. 1,414 yards and 11 touchdowns in the last 4 games of the season.
It's incredible,
which is very interesting. So it's gonna be weird to see what they do there between Mond and Starkel. However, you pointed out the defense is full of question marks.
Full of question marks.
Yeah, I think that's the nicest way of putting it.
Yeah. It really is. They have the one good guy and maybe a couple of good linebackers, and then outside of that, it's like they're not very deep, very young. Yeah. If you remember the UCLA game last year, right? Just I told you that the running back had like 200 something yards for that game. That you have to only look at that because if you look at the stats, Josh Rosen threw for 490 yards or something crazy like that in that game.
Right.
Absolutely insane. So it's not going to get much better, especially with an entirely new staff with Jimbo Fisher. Even though he's kind of a defensive guy, it's not. I don't think people can get excited just yet for this year at least.
Yeah, that game in particular was a massive comeback. Let's see.
It was a great game. It was one of the best games of the year.
Yeah, opening weekend. Yeah, 22-0 in the. No, they overcame a 20-point deficit for the first time since overcoming a 22-0 hole in the first quarter of the 2005 Sun Bowl.
Who ended up winning that game?
UCLA won it by 1 point.
Game. Yeah, they won. Yeah. It was kind of in the last minute or so.
Josh Rosen threw a touchdown in the last 43 seconds. Yeah. for almost 300 yards and 4 touchdowns in the final 15 minutes of the game.
I remember that game being. I remember that night being just a wonderful night of college football because it was, for one, you had that happening, which I don't know if you guys have seen the graphic that the guys at Good Bull Hunting put out whenever Texas A&M starts their inevitable fall. It's the Aggie roller coaster. It's really funny, and it was like that game was the Aggie roller coaster. Where it starts off like preseason hype, and they're going up, and it's like big win, and then it's like going up and like Heisman contender, and then it just falls off a cliff. And so I remember that happening at the same time, watching Tennessee play and debut the trash can that they carried on.
Right.
Because they were like, hey, we just want everybody in the world to know that our program belongs in here. And so that was just a magical night of college football because Tennessee was given so much false hope and embarrassment. Because I think they won that game against Georgia Tech and then just went off the rails, which was great. And even better was that Texas A&M UCLA game because it's always fun to watch a coach, because UCLA is going into the season, everything's kind of touch and go there, and so is Texas A&M, and it's like both coaches went from like, hey, he saved his job to he lost his job to he saved his job again. Like it was wonderful. It was just confusing and yeah, so
weird.
Fun game.
So weird. Keith, I want to ask you this. You are our resident Florida Gators beat writer. You follow Florida closely, so by proxy, you will be a little bit more familiar with hated rival Florida State than
the Noles.
Talking about the Noles.
Always happens this way.
Yeah. So Jimbo Fisher went there and was kind of lauded as the guy to take them to the next level. And I mean, he did. He won a national title while he was there in 2013. You get all the way up to this past season, which was underwhelming, partly because like everyone of importance got injured in the first game of the season.
Yeah.
They end up going to a bowl game still. So, it's still, enough of a winning season where they can do that. But he then leaves to take LeBron James level money. There's another LeBron. All the money in the world.
All the money in the world.
Mine and Rose other podcast, 40 Minutes of Hell. There's a plug. So, he leaves basically because it's good money in probably a less pressure-filled situation. You got to think the expectations are lower in College Station than they are.
Oh, for sure.
No, I don't think so.
So, that being said, Keith, do you think that he's the type of coach? Because at Florida State, it seemed like he had more to work with when he got there. This is a little bit more of a rebuild, a lot more question marks. Do you think he's the type of coach who can build a team, a successful team there, or at the very least successful enough to stay there for the 10 years that his contract is valuable for?
10 years is asking a lot of anybody,
Right.
Especially fans when things don't go well. But
and you play Nick Saban every year.
Yeah,
Right.
because he's never going to retire.
He has a Lazarus pit.
He's just going to continually suck the fun out of everything. That 2013 team that won the championship was mostly his players. By then all the Bowden recruits had left, and that was like one of the first or second years that he had his entire full team. So I think he can recruit well. I think he was getting out of maybe some of the pressure that he had established for himself, because he did come in, he recruited really well, got a national title, and now all of a sudden he has to kind of maintain that. And the ACC's getting stronger, supposedly. So I think he does kind of make the move to kind of get out from under his own shadow, I guess. And obviously gets paid super well to do so.
Right.
I don't know if anybody's going to turn down that kind of money to go and build a program.
No, it's stupid money. Stupid money.
That's so
Like,
much. It's
if
so
I
much.
was, if I'm halfway decent at a job, I don't even have to be like good enough to be considered one of the best at that job. And just anybody offers me, I mean, 3 times as much as I make now to go work somewhere. I mean, I'm gonna go there.
Yeah, it's crazy not to,
Yeah, exactly. Especially if it's a place where I feel like I could get away with, maybe having a, success being rated as like an 8 or 9 win season, as opposed to if you're not winning the conference,
10 or 11 win season. Yeah, and he probably likes the fact that he has some job security with a friggin' 10-year contract.
God.
That even if he gets bought out because things go sideways, he's guaranteed money.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Keith, quick follow up, because you and I recorded an episode entirely about the new coaching hires. But quick follow up: do you think that this particular hire is a good move for Jimbo and a good move for A&M?
I think it's a great move for Jimbo, for the reasons that we talked about.
The $ reasons.
Lower pressure, the Scrooge McDuck vault that he's going to build in his new home. It's a good move for A&M because you bring in a high profile coach who has won a national championship, who successfully replaced one of the all-time legends of college football coaching. And you're trying to get out of some really dark days with Kevin Sumlin. Like it's a good all-around move, I think, for everybody.
Yeah. This is my only bit of trepidation, and maybe Chandler, you can chime in with this as well. But you mentioned like some of the dark days of Kevin Sumlin. Kevin Sumlin seemed to stall out in the SEC, maybe more so than anything else. Because they made it to a bowl game last year, but it still was like a defense that how many times they gave up 35 or more points in like half of their games or something like that. So you had those sort of issues. It's pretty nasty, but was this a situation where A&M is thinking that maybe they were owed a little bit more, and so they got rid of Sumlin and made the move for Fisher?
I mean, I think yes. I think the bottom line is yes. I think that they looked at Kevin Sumlin and felt like they didn't get what they were paying for, and whether they should have the expectations they do or not. And this is why I disagree like pretty profoundly over him going to Texas A&M and having less pressure. I mean, this year the pressure is not on because I think everybody looks at it and thinks this is a rebuild, but they're not paying him $75 million over 10 years to win 9 games a year.
Sure.
I mean, that's you win a national championship money. They've already given him national championship trophies with the year not engraved yet, but as if like on the one hand to be weird and lame like Texas A&M is with all their stupid traditions, but also to be like also just a reminder that this is what we brought you here for, and right now, this season, the best thing you're playing for is third. If for some reason LSU gets smart and gets a new coach, then probably, I don't know. I just don't see this working out because if you look at what Texas A&M has been historically as a program, their average is typically, I cannot remember the stat that I saw, but I think their average, wins just as a program over the course of their history has been somewhere between 8 and 9, and someone won 9 and 10 every year. 8, 9, 10, somewhere in there. So someone was doing about what their program could expect plus 1 game. And you can get a lot of A&M. I know like their complaint has been, well, we had we've had a couple of once in a generation talents. I mean, obviously Johnny Manziel is a college player, Mike Evans is a college player, Myles Garrett. I mean, they've had some really, really great players come through, and you feel like that's a lot of great players with no kind of championships to show for it. But they're expecting him to win national championships. And again, this is in a climate where Georgia is kicking it up big time. Alabama, Auburn was better than Alabama last year. Judson did not agree with that statement that Auburn.
I mean they finished better, but were better than Alabama.
They beat them.
Remember, the Judson is a born and bred Alabama fan.
Right.
He was born in Northport, like right in earshot of the stadium. So, no, I mean, the question is how long. You talk about upgrades or whatever. Like how long is Texas A&M willing to wait to win a national championship?
Yeah.
I don't think they're gonna be content in 5 years if they haven't won the SEC or haven't won a national championship. At least won the West within 5 years. I don't think they're going to be content with that. Like I think they're thinking this is going to happen, that it's going to happen sooner than later. But like I said, you've got a lot of talent and a lot of teams that are on the rise in your own conference. And so, if you're looking in 4 years and Texas A&M is still, kind of right there with Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Arkansas, kind of competing to be the best of that group instead of competing to be the best of LSU, Alabama, Auburn. And I would argue that LSU is actually in the first group right now. But I don't know. I don't see it. I mean, obviously, if you're Jimbo, you take that money. I mean, there's no question. And when you get off the plane, I don't know if you saw that video. When you get off the plane and it looks like a North Korean propaganda, you're just walking down that red carpet saying 75 million, 75 million, 75 million.
Right.
And like when they bring the dog to meet you, and they're like, oh yeah, the dog likes him. I think this is going to work. You're like 75 million, 75. So he's going to get paid either way. Good for him. But I just don't. I mean. I think from a career standpoint and from a he wants to win championship standpoint, I still think the odds are way better to do that consistently at Florida State than they are going to be in the SEC West and at Texas A&M.
Yeah, but you also, you had Florida State fans calling for his head last season.
And I think that they severely underperformed last year for reasons that really didn't have anything to do with losing their. I mean, obviously, if you lose your starting quarterback, that's bad, but lots of teams lose their starting quarterback and the wheels don't fall off. I mean, if any team in the country had a reason to quit and have the wheels fall off after their starting quarterback got hurt, it was Ole Miss. But what happened?
We have Chandler's first Ole Miss reference of the podcast. We're waiting for it. I'm amazed it lasted this long. Mississippi State did the same thing. I mean, it was the last game. You lose Nick Fitzgerald, but Keaton Thompson comes in and plays really well. He plays great in the bowl game. I mean, teams lose their starting quarterback all the time. Right. You're supposed to be prepared for that.
Yeah.
If you're not prepared for that, you're not a good coach.
If you go from being a championship contender, which I don't think they were, but if you go from being a championship contender with Francois and you lose him, like you shouldn't be. If you truly were a championship contender as a team, you shouldn't drop to 6-6 to where you're trying to backdoor your way into a meaningless bowl game. I mean, so I get the sentiment, and I think that Jimbo is. Honestly, I think he's kind of overrated as a coach. I think he gets all this.
I wasn't gonna say. I was gonna say it, but I think you're right, man. He's also older. Dude.
Yeah, he gets all this hype, and yes, he's won a national championship, and that's great. Because again, there are only 3, 4, depending on your definition of active, because we don't know what's happening with Urban Meyer. But as of right now, there are only 3 coaches that will coach the first game in September with a national championship on their resume, and Jimbo's one of those 3. And if Meyer, if Ohio State is okay with turning a blind eye to domestic abuse and the coach shouldn't have reported it and all that kind of stuff, like if they're willing to sell their souls to the devil for football success, which they probably are, then they'll be one of 4 guys. But still, I don't know. I've never bought the hype with Jimbo, and and we'll see if A&M gives them the time.
Thanks again for listening to this specific individual team preview. If you want more content like this, be sure to subscribe to Running Out the Clock so you don't miss any more of our SEC previews leading up to this season. You can find the full episode that this comes from by searching for our 2018 SEC Preview full episodes. And you'll want to listen to that because we give a verdict at the end of whether or not we feel like the team mentioned will do better, worse, or stay the same. For Running Out the Clock, I'm your friend Joseph Craven. Thanks for listening.